Uh, Good afternoon, all. My name is Mehboob Haq, and I will be with you moderating today's program for the next 1 hour. On behalf of the Department of Biological Sciences, Alia University, I extend a warm welcome to the sixth lecture of the series Bioillumination 2020. I especially welcome our guest of today, Dr. Pankaj Suman, who is joining with us from Hyderabad. Uh, Before we begin, here are some technical notes. Firstly, all the participants are listen-only mode, and therefore I request everyone to please put your microphones in mute mode. And just a reminder that today's program is being recorded, and later on it will be uploaded on the YouTube channel of the department. If you have any question for our speaker, please submit them in the live chat option. All the quick queries will be taken up during discussion after the talk. Lastly, it is a humble request to all the participants not to start sharing the screen of your own device. So, without much ado, let us begin today's program. Now, may I request Dr. Masroor Alam, the head of the department, to formally welcome all the participants to the program. Dr. Alam, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Haq. Very good evening, everyone. Our today's speaker and other participants, scholars, students, and my respected colleagues. I hope all of you are doing well. I think most of you know that we are organizing this weekly talk series from the last 1 month, in which we are inviting different scientists working around the world in diverse fields of biological sciences and delivering their lectures on their respective topics. And we are also having quite good, healthy discussions after the lectures also. So today, as Dr. Haq told, today is our 5th consecutive week and the 6th lecture of this series. And we are fortunate enough today having today's speaker, Dr. Pankaj Suman, who is an eminent veterinary scientist working in the National Institute of Animal Biotechnology in Hyderabad, and will be delivering today's lecture on the topic Venom Selects, an aptamer-based method for identification of biomarker for differential detection of snake venom. I think just like me, this topic is totally novel for most of us, and that's why I am eagerly waiting for this lecture to learn something new. So, not wasting much time, I'll not say the same words again and again every day. And I'll just start the program with welcoming, especially Dr. Pankaj Suman in today's lecture, and all of our participants. And I also want to thank all of you for bearing with us so consistently and making our event successful. So thank you all, and let's start the lecture, today's lecture.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Alam. Now may I request our colleague, Dr. Safdar Ali, to chair today's session. Over to you, Dr. Ali. Sir, okay. Please unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Haq, and thank you, Dr. Alam, for the warm introduction and telling us about the purpose of Bioillumination as a talk series. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Pankaj Suman, whom I have had the pleasure to know for over 14 years now. A brief introduction. Dr. Pankaj Suman, he completed a BBSc, Bachelor in Veterinary Sciences in 2004 from Maharashtra Animal and Fishery Sciences University in Nagpur. Thereafter, he did his MSc in Biotechnology from IIT Roorkee and PhD from National Institute of Immunology, Delhi. He was also worked as a visiting scholar at Friedrich Schiller University, Jena in Germany from 2007 to 2010. He worked as a postdoctoral fellow as well for 2011 to 13 at NII and assistant professor at Amity University from 2013 to 14. After that, he even worked as a veterinary clinician in Animal Husbandry and Fishery Resources Department, Government of Bihar, till 2017, after which he has been working as a scientist at National Institute of Animal Biotechnology, Hyderabad. His research experience has been associated with reproductive biology, immunology, and veterinary clinical medicine. And his laboratory at NIIB at present is dedicated to address the clinical problems in veterinary medicine through developing affordable diagnostics, designer probiotics, and improving innate and adaptive immunity. His work has been published in over 30 international journals with all very respected journals, and they have been received wide acclaim. He has also been awarded with several awards and honors. Some of them include the Dr. B.L. Purohit Medal for Veterinary Sciences in 2004, the Best Discussant Award for MBIC Summer School, Jena, Germany, different travel grants like United States Department of Agriculture grant and the DST grant in 2010, and Professor G.P. Talwar Young Scientist Award for his outstanding contributions in reproductive health, which was conferred to him in 2014. So with that, without taking much time, I think I'll once again very warmly welcome Dr. Pankaj to deliver his talk. Over to you, Dr. Pankaj. Dr. Pankaj, can you hear me, please? Over to you.
Hi.
Hi.
So thank you very much and good afternoon to everyone. And especially thanks to Dr. Haq, Dr. Alam, and Dr. Sandar. So it's a very nice, I have a nice feeling that I'm able to interact with faculty, the students, everyone. And even in this situation, like in a corona situation, we are able to at least discuss and share our knowledge and the findings, what we did in past few years. So today I will discuss what we did in last 3.5 years in the venom research. So in my talk, I will give you a brief overview of how we have started and for what reason we have started and to which extent we have reached in this, and how someone can take a lead from here, or parallel research can be done, or someone can, like, it will give a lot of understanding that what hurdles we faced during doing this venom biology, venom research, and for different reasons. So I will share my slides. Please tell us that whether you are able to see or not. I will just share it.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. So this the title is Venom Selects. So I will come about the title little later, that what Selects is and what are aptamers. So just briefly, I will begin with the need for snake venom diagnosis. Why should we go for the diagnosis of snake venom? Why it's needed? So the upper one, if you see, sorry, at the top, the blue colored map, that is the spread of all over the world, the veterinary in all animals, the venom how many animals are getting affected or killed in different countries. So here you see India is little less represented as compared to China and other countries, but the reporting in the veterinary hospital is little less. But if you see in the human deaths, it's at the bottom side, you see the color. It's the highest death that is happening in India, specifically in Southeast Asia. India is the spot for the death because of the snake venom, snake bite. And because of this reason, government want some kind of active research to be undertaken in this area, so that we can reduce the burden. And we should now WHO has recognized snake bite as a neglected tropical disease. So after that, lots of research internationally has also begun. Earlier it was like a neglected area where very few people used to work, and not much research has been done. Or what you can say is the way other sciences has developed, the science of venom has not grown that much. So what we thought that initially, like if we have to address this problem, then what will be the major bottleneck? And we have discussed a lot with several people, and then we observed that diagnosis of venom is still a big problem. Like it's based on the traditional method of venom diagnosis. Like if you identify the snake or the person is diagnosed on the basis of symptomatic, and the way, and after that they get the treatment. So as I said earlier, so what challenges we faced right now also, and 3 years back, is most important is to get the venom. From where we will get the venom? I used to get from Chennai. There is a crocodile society, so from where we used to get, but from the rest of the part of the country, it's very difficult, and very few people who supply the venom. And getting the venom from the forest department clearance and getting it, it's a little challenging thing. And just to share the information why snake venom research is again tricky is the composition of same. Like if I talk about the cobra, scientific name is Naja Naja. If I talk about cobra, in India, everywhere cobra is prevalent across the India, but the composition of venom will vary from northeast, from Kolkata, from Uttar Pradesh, and from Kerala. The composition of venom varies as per the topography, geographical location. So again, it becomes very tricky. If you are developing an anti-venom or if you are developing a diagnostic, you have to cover the venom. You have to collect the venom from snakes across the country or across the globe. Then only you can say that the diagnostics or the anti-venom that you have made will be applicable for everyone, or they can go it blindly for that. So for doing that, capture of dangerous snakes and poisonous snakes and milking the venom is a big bottleneck. Nowadays it's becoming little, few people are coming up, but still it's a big problem. Then a traditional method is we collect the venom and then we immunize the horses, and then we collect the hyperimmune sera, and that is used for the therapy. But what in the current scenario, if you have, I don't know whether someone has come across or not, but if you get the anti-venom therapy, there is no monovalent like monospecific venom available. You will always get a polyspecific venom, like group specific. So in that case, many a times the patient is misdiagnosed, and if misdiagnosed and they are getting anti-venom therapy, then they will develop some sort of immunological reactions because of lots of antibodies going on, lots of serum therapy. So they develop secondary complications, and because of that, the person lives whole life with some or other sort of disability. So that's a big problem with those who are the victims of snake bite. Though they live, they survive from the snake problems of snake bite, but they live with certain disability because of the immunological problems they face after therapy. So this to overcome these problems, we have if you see the composition of the venom, then majorly it can be grouped into 5 different classes. One is the metalloproteases, then serine proteases, phospholipases, 3-finger toxins, and dendrotoxins. So these are the 5 groups. But if you see there are in India, there are major 4 snakes. We talk about mainly about the 4 snakes. Major, you will see big 4 snakes. Big 4s are cobra, krait, Russell's viper, and saw-scaled vipers. Cobra and krait comes in the elapids, and Russell's and saw-scaled vipers fall in the viperidae group. So the venom composition of cobra and krait is very much similar. If we compare the proteomic analysis data from the venoms of cobra and krait, they are very much similar to each other. And similarly with the vipers also, they are very much similar to each other. So in that situation, if you wish to differentiate between cobra and krait, it becomes very difficult that how you will identify the biomarker, on which basis you will differentiate that this person has bitten with the cobra or this person has bitten with the krait. So this is the biggest problem, that how to differentiate when they're very closely related to a species in the same family. And it becomes sometimes very important that if like nowadays still there is no other venom, like no group like no specific anti-venom available for cobra or krait. If person is bitten with cobra or krait, they get the same kind of anti-venom. So now there is no problem, but the problem is the efficacy of the anti-venom that they get. So what are different strategy people are exploring? These are not confirmed strategy. Whatever you see on the screen, people are exploring on these lines. They are engineering antibodies, like they are making therapeutic antibodies, humanizing them so that it has less cross-react, less immunological complications it creates. Then people are also proposing for immunization, epitope immunization for the antivenom generation. Then there are also reports now coming up, few papers have come up that they are using enzyme, because there are many, as I said, metalloproteinases, then phospholipases, and there are, so these are the enzymes that is our cytotoxins. They act on the cells and they create some kind of problem there, so they are enzymatically active. So is it possible to block the enzyme activity and save the life of the person? So that kind of small molecules are being designed for inhibiting the enzyme activity. Then polymer nanoparticle based hydrogels are also being used for inhibition of the activity of the venoms. And then aptamer based neutralization strategies that we are exploring over here. That how, is it possible to use aptamer for neutralization of the snake venom? Now coming up the how we started. So now this is the data obtained in our lab. This is what we started with. So when I joined here, lab was new, there was nothing much to do. So initially, so how to start it, and there were very few literature available on this direction, that how, so we started with the hypothesis that is it possible to differentiate. We took the toughest thing, that how to differentiate between cobra and crate. Cobra is Naja Naja and crate is Bangalores Carolus. So what we did first, we did bioinformatic analysis, that is it possible to, and are there any differential proteomic analysis can we get with that some sort of protein is present only in Naja Naja and not in a crate. So with that, we came across with one protein, and that was cytotoxin 7. And what we did, this was a very small protein of around 7.7 kilodalton. So we got a synthetic gene for that. And then we cloned and expressed these proteins, you see on this, the bottom side of this, left side bottom. So we purified this recombinant protein of cytotoxin 7. And the right side, you see the ELISA-based reactivity of different antigens with purified monoclonal antibody. And then we made the monoclonal antibody against cytotoxin 7. Now, even after initially when we used the proteomic data, we were sure that this protein is only present in Naja Naja. When we generated the monoclonal antibody, now the monoclonal, it's reacting with the both. You see the it's reacting with the both Naja Naja and Bangalores Carolus. So, but the reactivity of these two was different. Maybe because of the level of expression of cytotoxin 7 in the venom. So maybe cytotoxin 7 is more in cobra venom as compared to crate venom. But the antibody was detecting both of these. Now, the second problem that we faced with this monoclonal antibody, that it was not detecting the native venom. When we were denaturing this venom, then it was able to detect it. So the folding, maybe the folding of the recombinant protein was a big problem. So when we used to denature this, and then only we are able to detect the venom. So what we and similar situation we observed with another protein that we took, and in that there was another problem, that that protein was not at all immunogenic in mouse, and we couldn't generate any monoclonal antibody with that. So what we concluded from here is maybe these proteins are not like, because these proteins are very small peptide kind of thing, and they are processed in the venom gland. Maybe lots of post-translational modifications take place, and because of that, the folding of this protein in the as a recombinant protein form may not be that good. Like if you start with a native venom, if you isolate these proteins from the native venom, then they will be in a proper conformation. But if you start expression of these recombinant proteins, then they may not be that good. So this is a first lesson that we learned, that it's not a good strategy, first of all, to start with a recombinant protein to develop a monoclonal antibodies, because it may not give you the right thing that we wanted. But still, with this antibody, again, we tried and we went ahead and we developed a lateral flow based assay where if you see this in a lateral flow assay, if you are aware, just I will briefly give an overview. If you see on the left side, so on the left side, extreme left, there is a strip kind of thing, and in that strip, there are different kind of membranes that are assembled. So first membrane is the sample pad, then the pink one is the conjugate pad. Then there are two lines, one is red and one is gray, is little red. So that is that these two lines are drawn on a nitrocellulose membrane, and at the end is the sample absorbent pad. So what we do is on the sample pad, the first place, the sample pad is having a different pore size, so we put the sample over there, and on the conjugate pad is the antibody labeled with the gold nanoparticle that is put on the conjugate pad, and the two lines are having the specific like receptors that will recognize them. So on the basis of this, we developed this lateral flow assay. Here in the lateral flow assay, so what we observed is if you add cobra, naja is the cobra venom, right? So in the second panel, if you see, the first is the control line. First line is the control where we didn't have any kind of venom. So there is only one line, and appearance of venom line, the second line, is the confirmatory for the presence of venom. So when we added the cobra or crate, the first one is naja and then crate. Then you see the appearance of venom line, and in this vipers, there is no apparent, there is no venom line that appears. So it confirmed that the antibody that we generated was very good, and it was recognizing cytotoxin. Only thing is, so now what we have developed is strategy is we collect the venom like from the swab. If we collect them from the patient, if we collect the swab of the venom, then what we have to do is we have to first process it with a column. We have developed a column for processing. So it takes 5 to 10 minutes for processing of the venom, and then you add on to this lateral flow strip, and then it will be the venom will be able to detect. So only we wanted to avoid any kind of pre-processing step in the lateral flow assay, but because we couldn't generate a good antibody that can recognize the native venom, so we have to introduce it. So this is what we did with this. So after that, what we thought that it's very important first to identify the biomarkers, and then develop some kind of diagnostic using native venom rather than taking the recombinant proteins, and identify the differentially which protein is specifically present only in one venom and not in another one. So we were working with something with the aptamers. So now our story for aptamers starts. So these aptamers are nothing but the small oligonucleotides. They can bind to the target molecule like antibodies. So you see the structures of the aptamers.
Excuse me,
just
Dr.
one
Kumar.
second.
Just 1 second. Someone else has started sharing the screen. Just a minute.
Just 1 second.
Could you please start sharing your PPT again?
Pardon? Should I share again?
Yes, sir. Yes, exactly.
Okay. I will do that.
Yes, it's visible now. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. It's okay.
Okay.
So now the aptamers, these are the small oligonucleotides. If you see, they automatically fold on the basis of their complementarity. So you will observe few regions are having some kind of conformation, and few regions are not having any conformation, and they are just like single stranded. So because of that, and the aptamers came into the existence from the knowledge that transcription factors bind to the DNA. So these transcription factors bind to the DNA with a very high specificity. So with that, people thought that why not synthetic DNA? Synthetic DNA, is it possible that synthetic DNA may have the similar kind of binding affinity and a specificity for the small molecules? And lots of work has been done in this direction. And these aptamers are working very well, very well as compared to antibodies. It's and we have done a lot on this. And now, if you see the problems that somebody can say that why aptamers are still not that popular as compared to antibodies, then there are few issues associated with that. And these issues are because these are DNA sequences, though they are very stable, but many times in the buffer conditions, they are working very well. But if you take these aptamers and use them in the milk, sera, or some other biological fluids, in this biological fluid, the structure of these aptamers start changing because of the ionic strength, or maybe because of the pH. So they are little less stable. So a smartness has to be shown in the selection of the aptamers that they are stable in those conditions also. So I will show you a few data related to this and how we started selection of aptamers against the whole venom rather than a recombinant protein that we did for the antibodies. So this is the process of selection of aptamers for students to, if they should understand that how we do the selection of aptamers. For that, there is the term that is used, selects, that I have used. So selects is an abbreviated term for systemic evolution of ligand by exponential enrichment. So in a selects process, what you have to do is initially you have to take a DNA library, single stranded or single strand DNA or single stranded RNA. So in the cycle at the top, if you see, this is a library of 10 to the power 10, 10 to the power 12, different size. So it has been designed in such a way that each sequence in this oligonucleotide is different. So the library is not big. There are different length of libraries that commercially that is available. So you can get N20, N means nucleotide. So 20 nucleotide library, 30 nucleotide, 40, 60. So these are variable length of libraries. It depends that what size of molecule for which you want to select. So as per the size of the target, you can choose different kind of libraries, N20, N20, 30, 40, 60. So first, initially we take the library and then we throw our target, right? So what will happen is the target will find a specific ligand in that. So whichever DNA will bind with your target, like here in this case, we are using venom. So if you see number 1, which is binding, so the target will bind with the aptamer, and then what we have to do is we have to separate out the aptamers which is binding with the target, and so that we have to retain it, and rest we have to discard it. So the second step, partitioning. In partitioning step, what we do is we remove the target bound aptamer sequences and discard the other ones, rest of them. So in the first step, there will be very few sequences, like we are starting with 10 to the power 10, 11. So size of library here will be only 1,000 or so sequences. So what we have to do is, because we have got 1,000, but they may be or they may not be very much specific for the target. So what we do is, again we make we amplify with PCR. So all aptamer will become double stranded, but we don't want double stranded sequences. So this is amplification step. We don't want the double stranded sequence to be used as a aptamer. Aptamers are single stranded. So again, from this double stranded, we have to make it single stranded. So here also there are few steps that we have to follow. We have to denature it by alkali treatment, and then we have to separate it with the help of streptavidin magnetic beads. So all these steps, it takes around 1 day. Whole step, you can complete the whole step in 1 day, from taking the library, binding with the venom, and then partitioning it, amplification. So in 1 day, 1 cycle will get completed. So then you have to run the gel and check it. So this process is repeated several times. So what will happen is, the selected aptamers in the first step will keep on amplifying, and ultimately you will have a large number of aptamers, which is very, very specific for the targets. And the pool that the DNA pool that will be left at the end of that, you will have all binding to the target, and that can be cloned and that can be sequenced. So this is the strategy what we have followed here. So in this, if you see the first step, where a streptavidin magnetic bead, where first a linker was attached to the magnetic bead, and with the linker, this the first step, then we have immobilized with the library. So library was first immobilized onto the magnetic bead, then we added the crate venom. Then the crate venom, once it binds with the crate venom, then the aptamer will be free. So aptamer will leave the magnetic particle because after binding with the target, it will show some kind of conformational chain. So it will not remain associated with the magnetic beads. Earlier that was immobilized on that. So what we have to do is we have to separate out the magnetic beads from the supernatant. Magnetic bead, we will discard it because magnetic bead is having all the aptamer sequences, which is not at all important for us. What important for us is those sequences which is present in the solution phase at the top. So we have to collect that, then amplify it, make a single stranded DNA, and keep this process repeated for several times. So on the right hand side, the bar graph is the representation of how much DNA we got. So this is the quantification of the DNA that we got after each cycle. So if you see the first cycle, very less DNA, second cycle, there is improvement in the DNA output. So progressively we kept on getting more and more, and then after some time we get a stabilized output. All the time same amount of DNA is we used to recover. So at that time, because now we wanted, this is what we did. So initially we have started the selection of aptamers against crate venom. Now we know that both crate and cobra venom are very much similar. So what we did after selection of aptamers against crate venom, then at this stage, at the cycle number 11, after 11th cycle, we have started addition of cobra venom as a target. So what we wanted is, suppose there were 100 aptamer sequences for crate venom, because crate and cobra venoms are very much similar. So in this cycle, after 10th cycle, after 11th cycle, most of the aptamers that is also binding with the cobra venom will be gone. We wanted to remove whatever aptamer sequences that can bind with the cobra venom also. We removed that by doing that process is called as counter selection. It's not a proper selection, it's a counter selection. So from, like, if you say there were initially from crate venom we got 100, so now with after doing this counter selection with the cobra venom, we have removed more than 90 and only 10 will be there. So if there, so after that you see that there is a dramatic decrease, again there is a decrease in the output, and on 11, 12, and you see 12, 13 and 14 cycle. So after that again same output we used to get. So after that we cloned this DNA, whatever DNA we got after 14th cycle of selects, we cloned it and sequenced it. After cloning and sequencing, so this is cloning in the vector, and this is the what plasmids we got. So after cloning and sequencing, we got several aptamers, like more than 35. Now, how to screen them, whether they are binding with this binding with the venom or not. For a screening, there are several ways that can be used. So in this is what we did. Here it's again, this is an innovative approach we took, where we have because we were working on the lateral flow based assay system. So we have developed a simple paper based, you see the schematic flowchart for aptamer screening. So anyone can do this. No analytical equipment required. Earlier people used to use for this ITC, microscale thermofluorescence or SPR kind of equipment for, or fluorescence kind of assays for binding, for checking the binding aspects, which aptamer is binding. But if you suppose if you have 25 aptamers and you have to do the fluorescent assays, then you have to label them. All the aptamers has to be labeled with the fluorescent tags, and that will cost a lot. So to avoid all those huge expenses on the cost while screening, what we did is a very simple method we have devised, where because aptamers, if you have if you I will just give you a brief idea that the aptamers initially the N25 say, then they have 20 variable sequences, and the flanking area towards 5' side and 3' side, about 15 to 20 nucleotides are constant regions. So what we did is we designed a probe that is complementary to the 5' area, 5' side of the aptamer, and attached that probe to the gold nanoparticle. So now very easily I can, like, if I had 35 aptamer, different kind of aptamers, so in 35 different tubes, initially I put all the gold nanoparticle attached with the probe, and then in each tube I have added 35 different kind of aptamers. Then on the strip, if you see, there is a line on the nitrocellulose membrane, there is a line. Here we have quoted the venom, create venom. So the red one, the step 2, when we have added the gold nanoparticle having immobilized aptamers. So aptamer immobilized on gold nanoparticles, you put onto the sample pad. Then because of the this capillary action, the aptamers attached with the gold nanoparticles will start moving. So step 3. So it will start moving, and if the aptamer recognizing the venom present in the form of the line, then it will give you a red band, that is a positive. If it's not recognizing, then you will not get any kind of band. So in this process itself, we are testing the hypothesis whether the aptamer has the ability to develop as a lateral flow assay or not. So one way, it's giving us a confirmatory output that it's yes, you will be this aptamer is binding with the venom. Second, this one is also proving a fact that if you take this aptamer for further research, then we will be able to develop a lateral flow based assay using this also. So I will show you some data here for the create venom. We have a screened AK1, AK2, AK3, AK4, and AK5. These are the aptamers, different kind of aptamers. On first strip, in each section, you see 4 different kind of strips. First strip was coated with the line, the nitrocellulose line. In first, everyone, K stands for crate, C for cobra, R for Russell Viper, and S for the SSV for sow-scaled vipers. So all these 4 different strips were labeled with different kind of venoms, and one kind of aptamer was allowed to travel. The aptamer in the first, if AK1, when it went, when we allow it to move, then it has recognized only crate venom K. There is no recognition in others. AK2, the same. It also recognizes the crate venom. Then AK3 also recognizing only a little bit of cobra, and AK4 little bit of cobra venom also, and more of the crate venom, and similar for AK5. So this the recognition of this, like AK2, what we have AK2 we have taken further. So we are working on this aptamer AK2, which is recognizing very strongly this cobra venom, and very faint or no, it's negligible with the crate venom. So on this basis, now what is like how we want to move ahead with this is, now we have a aptamer. Suppose AK2 is working very well for one recognition of crate venom. Now the problem with this is now how we take it further for development of diagnosis. Is it possible to use all the time venom over here? It's not always possible that we take venom and put over the nitrocellulose membrane, because getting the venom itself is a big thing. So identification of the protein partner for this aptamer is the next step that we want to do. that which protein is binding to AK2 aptamer, and that can be done with the help of what we want to do is we want to, if you see on this last slide, so if you want to take any kind of toxin venom, so similar to crate, if you take any kind of venom or toxin, perform selects, and then you can this first equipment is this ITC, then the method of screening that we have developed, then macro scale thermophoresis that can be done, the third strategy. And with that, if you identify or one particular aptamer, then the aptamer can be incubated with the venom, incubate the aptamer with venom, and aptamer has to be immobilized on a magnetic bead. So with the help of that, with the help of a magnet, aptamer binding to the venom can be settled down at the bottom, and that can be so whatever protein is binding with the aptamer can be checked with the help of mass spec. So with that, we can identify which protein is getting recognized with that aptamer, and on the basis of that, once we have the specific aptamer, then we can make a recombinant protein or a peptide or something, and on the basis of that, we can develop a biosensor or lateral flow based assay, and that kind of, or even if aptamer is not working well, now we identify that yes, this protein, if you recognize this protein, then you may be able to differentiate between cobra and crate venom also. So that kind of information we will get out of this, and that can be further used for generation of monoclonal antibodies, because we know that this protein is very important, and if you put efforts on that, then we will be able to develop a good diagnostic that can even differentiate between cobra and crate kind of thing. So same strategy if we follow for rest of the venoms, like I'm just talking about 4 venoms right now, the big force that is leading to major death in the country or even worldwide, but there are hundreds of venomous snake species, and also not only this, like bee venom, scorpion venoms. There are so many different kind of poisonous things, creatures available, and for that we need some kind of interventions. So for that sake, if you are, if and all the venoms are complex. So if we start with any kind of, if we have the venom, if we start with this, maybe we will be able to identify a specific biomarker for detection, and that may be useful for development of a lateral flow assay or for development of a highly sensitive biosensors kind of thing. So this is all about for from my side. Thank you very much for listening and giving me opportunity to share my experiences and work with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Pankaj, for giving a very nice and interesting talk. The best part was, I think, for most of us, it was a very new topic and something very upfront, which is being done right now. I would now like to request Dr. Mehboob Haq to please discuss the questions that have been raised.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think, first of all, I thank Dr. Suman for such a nice presentation and very interesting topic. So I have some queries from my side, personal side, that I will ask later. First of all, let us take the questions from participants. The first question it was asked by one of our student, Ms. Jakia Sultana. She asked, which aptamer is better? Is it DNA based or RNA based?
Because yeah, we are working with the DNA based aptamers because DNA based aptamers are more stable and synthesis is easier. Like synthesizing a RNA, it's a little costlier than synthesizing a synthetic DNA. Like getting a primer is like 1,500, you can get that sequence, but getting for RNA sequences, it's costlier. So it's better to start with the DNA aptamers. If it's not working, then someone can go with the RNA aptamers.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. There is another question related to aptamer asked by Ms. Bini Paul. For this aptamer function, how much would be required? Like how much concentration of the venom would be required for this aptamer based assay?
Yeah, how much venom? Like we have. Yeah. So we normally we get about 1 to 5 gram of the venom, and we take it will take lots of venom. Venom will be required in at least hundreds of milligram of venom will be required. So each step you have to repeat. So for completion of one step, at least you have to keep 0.5 gram to 1 gram of venom.
Thank you for the answer. Another question was asked by Ms. Jeva. It is, what is the role of gold nanoparticle in this assay particularly?
Okay. Actually, gold nanoparticles, if you, I guess, first, okay, I will explain that gold nanoparticles have two kind of properties. So
Actually,
when
she
they
has
are,
just. I will add one more question with that. She has another question later on that what if we use a silver nanoparticle in place instead of gold? So
yeah,
can we use silver? So that
yeah,
is the combined question.
yeah, okay. So gold is because gold has a property that it can give you the color. So if gold is aggregated at one place, if all the gold particles come to one line, then it will give you a red line, red band. So any other particle, anything that can give you the color can be used instead of gold. And silver particles are used with gold particles to enhance the sensitivity of the assay. You will get better sensitivity of your assay if you are using gold nanoparticles coated with silver. And any particle, any kind of particle that can impart some kind of color can be used over here. But and second thing, that gold has a very unique property, that labeling of gold, like gold has the affinity for thiol groups, right? So gold can bind with the thiol groups, so, and amino acids are having a thiol groups. So those peptides or the proteins having the thiol groups can very easily get immobilized onto the gold particles without any kind of functionalization. Otherwise, in other system, you have to functionalize your particles with some specific functional groups, and that will enhance the cost. So that's why one of the reason for why people are persisting with gold nanoparticles is that gold can be very easily conjugated with the DNA molecules.
Okay, thank you so much. So one more question was asked by Dr. Asim Azhar. Like as these days we are going through like a lot of discussions regarding SARS-CoV-2. His question is that can aptamer be used to target SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, like
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
for the diagnosis of? Okay.
Now I will tell you here, we did a start work with SARS-CoV-2 with both antibody and aptamers, but there were few things I have mentioned over here also. So we have started with the recombinant protein because there was no virus available that time. And when we started with the recombinant protein and we made antibodies, no antibodies recognize the virus. So the problem is if you start with the recombinant proteins, it may not fold it properly, and ultimately the antibodies or aptamers that you select will be totally a futile exercise. Now, for the detection of viruses, aptamers are the best as compared to antibodies, because
Antibodies.
yeah, the reason is aptamers recognize the conformation, the contours. So a virus, very closely related virus also will have some or other kind of conformational differences at the surface. So aptamers recognizes that. So even if there are very little differences in the sequence somewhere here and there, the aptamers can very easily recognize the surface, and that can be unique for the detection of a specific viruses. So very specifically that can be used if you have, but keep in mind that you have to use, it's better to use live viruses rather than using a killed viruses or having or using a recombinant protein for that. Success rate of success will be high.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I think you have answered the questions asked by the participants. Just I have one just basically query regarding that. What is the translational potential of your kit, that like your assay that you're developing right now?
Yeah.
And translation potential, as well as will it be useful for in situ diagnosis, like a person, a wildlife biologist, he went for his expedition in the wild and he got bitten by a snake. So will it be possible to get it like immediately diagnose which to identify which snake has bitten him?
So you are talking about antibody or
No,
aptamer?
no, yeah, aptamer.
Aptamer. Yeah. So for
How are
aptamers,
we optimistic? That is my
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah. So what I can say here is we have developed another essay. We have not come to the conclusive thing for the venom, but similarly on the similar line we were working for detection of antibiotics. So what was, and that was tetracycline. So tetracycline is a very small antibiotic, and we were working for development of aptamer-based lateral flow assay, the kind of assay we want to develop for venoms. So we have developed it, and we have developed a lateral flow assay for detection of oxytetracycline, and it's working very well in milk and serum, very well. So this aptamers, if you are like the that I explained you before, that you have to be, the selection of aptamers should be very good, and it should not get show any kind of interference if you are using a biological fluid. So since we have developed an aptamer based lateral flow assay for antibiotics. Similarly, now we understand the process and the complications associated with that. So once we now, because we have the venom aptamer for plate venom, and it's working well, as I have shown also. So very soon we are very much optimistic that we will be able to develop a lateral flow based assay for this also. Now coming to the translational potential
Thank you
as
so much
compared to
for your answer.
antibodies. Yeah. Yeah.
I think so. I have a few more questions.
Yeah.
So why did you like? Basically, I got one question. That was why regarding again the gold nanoparticle. Why like what made you choose gold nanoparticle? Basically, what was the idea behind that? There's another question related to that only.
Yeah. So why I have selected its ease with which I can synthesize it. It's very easily I can synthesize in the lab, first thing. Second, very easily a thiol, if I attach a thiol linker to the aptamer, then I can very easily attach with the gold nanoparticle. These are the two reasons because of that we are working with gold nanoparticle based lateral flow assay. Otherwise, there is no, like, if there is a better particles that I can get, so that can be used. And synthesis is very easy. I'm not buying any gold or iron nanoparticles from commercial sources. We are synthesizing on our own. So because it's very cost effective for us, so we are working with that, because for optimization of different assays you require a lot of nanoparticles, and if you can synthesize in the laboratory, then you get more like, even if few experiments get wasted, you don't care about that. So it's very important that you start with some system where you have the hold on the production of those nanoparticles.
Okay, thank you. I have two more questions from one of our colleagues. Another question is that was there any attempt by you or your team to patent this aptamer-based technology for venom?
Yeah, we are in the process. Yeah, it's in the process of filing.
Okay, thank you for the information. I will look up to it, and so we're waiting for that. Very soon we'll get the product in market. Maybe.
Yeah.
One more question. Was there any work on identifying the exact components of each venom?
Any?
Like, to identify exact component of each venom, as you have mentioned in the second slide, that there are multiple components.
Yeah, efforts are there. We are working on that, and we are working with this pull down and mass spec. So we are working on that. So next step is that. So because this is an ongoing work that I have shown to you. So till now we have achieved to this much, and now we are looking forward that if we can identify a specific proteins, then that will be a big thing.
Thank you so much. I think related to this, there was one question which if say that the venom composition from same species of a snake, place to place the venom composition varies. Does it have any relation with the evolution of the snake, like evolutionary makeup? Is there any correlation between the evolution and the venom composition? Can you correlate with that?
Venom, if in the same species, if the venom composition is varying, then it's more about the adjustment with the environment. It's the environmental adjustment that they do. So because of the in the different kind of environment, what kind of food, what kind of temperature they get, on the basis of that, the composition of different venom proteins vary. But otherwise, expression is same, but the level of expression varies. So it's not related to the like. I don't think there is anything related to the evolution. Evolution will be a different thing. Evolution will not be associated with the topographical differences in the venom composition.
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again, Dr. Suman. Thank you so much for a nice explanation to each and every question. So I think with this, we come to the end of today's session. Now I'd like to request our colleague, Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Abu Imam Sadi, to propose the vote of thanks. Dr. Sadi, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible, sir?
Yes,
yes, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, all the participants, all the dignitaries and speakers. On behalf of Biological Sciences, Alia University, I, Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Abu Imam Sadi, it's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks. First of all, my heartfelt thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Alia University, Professor Muhammad Ali Sir, Registrar Dr. Syed Nurul Salam Sir, Dean Faculty of Science and Technology, Professor Mehdi Kalam Sir, for their constant support and guidance. Now, most importantly, my heartfelt thanks to our respected speakers, Dr. Pankaj Shuman Sir, for accepting our invitation and spare his precious time with us. Thank you, sir, for your unique and innovative speech on venom select, an aptamer-based method for identification of biomarker for differential detection of snake venom. Thank you, sir, for your sharing much knowledge that are unknown for all of us, which will be beneficial for our new researchers and as well as the MSc students and all the colleagues. Thank you, sir, again. I also express my heartfelt thanks to the head of the Department of Biological Sciences, Dr. Masroor Alam, for facilitating and putting efforts to make this program is successful. Thank you, Dr. Alam. Now, special thanks to our convener of bioillumination, Dr. Sabdar Ali, for their conceptualizing of bioillumination and containing the program very smoothly and also control the technical system of the program. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Now, special thanks and gratitude to Professor Vishwanath Chakraborty for their inspiration in every moment and who is also a helping hand of our department. Thank you, Professor Chakraborty. Now, most importantly, we know that success of any program depends on a collaborative effort. So my heartfelt thanks to all my colleagues of the department, especially Dr. Mehboob Haq, Dr. Zakir Hossain, Dr. Mudassirul Huda, and Dr. Sheikh Kobita. And all are also busy with accepting the peoples and responsible for the technical part of the Google Meet here. Special thanks to Dr. Mehboob Haq because he was coordinated the entire poster preparation and popularization of the event along with the whole registration and certification. And now thanks to all the participants who join in Google Meet as well as in live YouTube, especially those are different universities and colleges. Your present and active participation is our encouragement. Once again, thank you so much for kind attention. Thank you, all of you. Now I over to Dr. Dr. Hawk.
Thank you, Dr. Sadi, for proposing vote of thanks. Okay, now I think officially we'll conclude the session, and I'll request our speaker, Dr. Suman, to please stay with us for a few minutes for interaction with our colleagues of the department, and I request all the participants to please leave the meeting room.